On to our big spotlight then, which Bertha was talking about. It's the World Happiness Day that's going to be celebrated on the 21st of this month, and a group of experts from the United Nations every year survey people from various countries in search of the happiest nation and the population in the world. And this year, unsurprisingly, it was Denmark that has taken the top spot, followed by Switzerland, Iceland, Norway and Finland. However, not so happy are we Indians, because India's happiness quotient has witnessed a fall compared to last year, with its ranking falling to 118. How exactly is this index calculated, and what are the parameters taken into consideration, and why do countries like Denmark and Switzerland score so high all the time? Joining us to take this conversation forward is Professor John F. Helliwell, Professor Emeritus Economics from the University of British Columbia and one of the key editors of that report. Professor, thank you very much for joining us here on The Big Picture. You know, when the report came out, it created a lot of heat, especially in countries like India, which didn't do too well. So are you surprised with the sort of response that this report has generated around the world?
Well, this is now the fourth report, and in a way, we're very happy that the reactions are bigger than they were before, because it means people are starting to take these data seriously. There's more attention being paid year by year, and that will eventually cause people to look seriously at what underlies these evaluations of life, and then they'll see what they can do to make them better for each other. So the interest is good. Ask me some questions about how we measure it, and I'll try and answer them.
In fact, the measurement we understand is of course based on the blueprint that OECD had come up with. In fact, they had come up with this Better Life initiative that was launched back in 2011. But Professor, a lot of, the concern that is emanating from from developing countries like India is that it always so happens that the more developed a country is, the higher they appear as far as this happiness index is concerned. And this index was originally prepared for the OECD countries, with very high per capita incomes. Then how do you fine-tune it for emerging and developing and less, rich countries around the world? How do you fine-tune it, so that it sort of it also encapsulates and captures the peculiarities of some of the emerging countries?
Let me be clear. We do not publish an index. We do no adjustment. We don't have anything to do with the Better Life Index of the OECD. We don't like indexes for just the reason you suggest, that if you weight them to one part of the world, then they may not fit another part of the world. What we report is nothing more than the average answer in every country to the same question. And the question is asked of 1,000 people a year in every country. In fact, it's 3,000 a year in India. And the question is, think of your life as a ladder, with the best possible life for you being a 10 and the worst possible being a 0. How would you rate your life today? So we're only reporting back what people are saying as they evaluate their own lives. And it differs, of course, a lot across countries. We then go on and try and explain those differences, but the explanations we find, of course, depend on the numbers being an accurate reflection of how people feel in those countries. And from our researches, we think people are pretty good judges of the quality of their own life.
All right, because the report was also important, because especially from an India standpoint, because the report brought out that while India ranking came down. India was ranked 111 in 2013. But India is in fact among a group of 10 countries which has seen the largest happiness declines, along with Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Yemen. Can you tell us a little bit more about when you were sort of compiling this report, and more from an India perspective?
Yes, I spent some time today going and looking and seeing when we try and explain the differences, we use 6 variables that turn out to explain 3/4 of the differences across countries and over time. Their income per capita, healthy life expectancy, do you have someone to count on in times of trouble? And that's the one where India is the lowest relative to other countries, and that brings down the ranking a fair amount. Then there are perceptions of corruption in business and government, and India's about the world average on that. Then there's generosity. How much do people give to other people? India's about world average on that. And then there's a sense of freedom. You feel you have freedom to make your key life choices. And that's not too bad in India either, but it's a little on the low side. So relative to the average country, India is lower on GDP, on healthy life expectancy, but most importantly, on this feeling that people have that they're not as socially connected enough as they'd like to be in comparison to other countries. And so I, in some sense, turn around to you and say, have you noticed worsening as India is moving ahead in an industrial and commercial and economic way? Is it possible that people don't have as much time for each other as they used to?
Fair enough, Professor. But over the last few years, have you seen impact, these reports impacting public policies? Because earlier public policies, as policy makers, government officials would only look at hard data. But now over the years, are you seeing policymakers taking these kind of reports more seriously?
Some are, some aren't. I think some are still very much resisting, in part because for them the economic agenda is the whole story. But the more they consult people and the more we survey people, the more we find that people want a broader view of life. You'll remember the Sarkozy report of a few years ago arguing that GDP is not a big enough measure or a wide enough measure. And these life evaluations are, I think, what everybody thinks are the next thing to pay attention to. I think there are now 4 countries that have ministers of happiness, most recently the United Arab Emirates. More importantly, there are many state governments at lower levels and city governments and communities that are using these data to inform their choices about what to do next. And there's also a move to make it one of the outcome measurement devices for the Sustainable Development Goals adopted last year.
We shall leave it at that, Professor. Appreciate you joining us here on The Big Picture and taking us quickly through the basic parameters and the logical rationale that you used while coming up with these numbers. Thank you so very much.